Hey, everybody, it's Scott Golden, and I want to welcome you back to our podcast, From the Ground Up, a podcast about autism, faith, and family. And I'm joined by my co-host and extraordinary therapist, Megan Halpert. Welcome, Megan.
Thanks, Scott. It's good to see you again.
The BCBA rock star. We're glad to have you as part of this. Why don't you update us, Megan? What's happening in your life, just to give the listeners an idea of what's going on?
Yeah, it's right now getting ready to start harvest here in Indiana, so we are spending a lot of time outside. It's nice, cool temperatures. My parents are getting ready to get in the field, so the little boys are very excited to get to ride in the combine and the tractors with Pawpaw. We've been hitting it hot and heavy with flag football for the two littlest, for the 7-year-old and 4-year-old, Grayson and Stinson. Grayson's been playing baseball as well on Sundays, so our weekends are jam-packed with football from age 4 all the way
Every
up
angle.
to... Yes, my husband has Purdue season tickets, so I have to go to Purdue football game. We are house divided. We're like IU Purdue. We're house divided. I go to cheer against him. People are like, "Why did you marry this chick?"
For those in the greater Texas area, that would be like somebody from University of Texas marrying somebody from Oklahoma University.
Yes.
The two just don't mix well.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And Megan, just to bring everybody up to date too, you've got 3 kids. So for a lot of people and a lot of moms that especially maybe listening going, my life is chaos, you can relate to that a little bit as well. You've got 3 back to back.
I've got a 7-year-old boy who's starting to hit that sassy pants stage he's in first grade now, and he knows it all, and his father's coming out on him. And I'll be honest with you, my husband is great, but all the things that Grayson does, I'm like, that's you. I have a 4-year-old.
That was you at 7.
That was you. Yep. I have a 4-year-old little boy named Stinson, who is the child that's taught me not to judge other parents and their parenting styles, for sure. And then we have our 16-month-old little girl, Barron. Great, like I said, Grayson's in first grade, Stinson's in preschool, and Barron's still at home with me. I get to monitor and manage them all. There's never a dull moment, for sure.
Absolutely. I'm in that football phase as well. I'm deep into, my passion is Texas high school football, and I'm at a high school football game just about every Friday night. I'm passionate about this year's Dallas Cowboys. I think they're going to go to the Super Bowl. Their first 2 games, they dominated their competition. And as Megan, and for those of you listening, pretty much right after this podcast, I'm going to be packing up and heading toward Italy. I'm going to be going to Italy for a kind of a bucket list trip, and I'm really excited about that. And I can't wait to get back maybe and share some things that I might have seen there. So it's going to be a really exciting time.
All kinds of pictures.
So I
can't wait to see them.
Absolutely. So let's get into autism, faith, and family. Our show is divided up into 3 parts because we think that it takes a holistic approach. Would that be the best way to describe it? Megan, we think you can't just focus on what you've got to do for the child that has the issue. You've got to look at how that's affecting you spiritually, and you have to look at how it's affecting your family as well. So we feel like that's important to talk about those 3 items every time we get a chance to get together. And Megan is big on the first part. What do you want to try to cover on the autism part tonight, Megan? What's on your mind?
Yeah, I think it's really important, as you had mentioned, Scott. This is it's something that covers all aspects of life. It's just not one thing. And so when we know that those things will impact all areas of life, I think it's really important that we make sure that we're doing our due diligence as parents, as providers, as those supporting families. We're doing what we need to from a standpoint of using our resources wisely. And so what I want to talk about this week is, what does evidence-based mean? What does research-based mean? Because the minute that families get on to Google after they've gotten that diagnosis and they're going to start to look for different treatments, these are terms they're going to see pop up a lot. And they're terms that I really want families to be aware of and what they mean. And so I want to talk a little bit about that.
Let's face it, there's a lot when you first start down that road, it's overwhelming, the information that comes at you. And it can all look the same if you're not careful. And there's very many differences. And a parent that's walked down that road, it can be very confusing. So what we hope to do in tonight's session is to maybe clear up some of that confusion so that you can know what road best matches what your child needs to do, as well as making sure that what limited finances you have are being spent wisely so that you can get the biggest bang for your buck. Because I think that's a big concern for a parent that's starting down this path is, what does it look like financially? And making sure that you're spending those dollars wisely is just so important.
Absolutely. So when you're Googling and researching, there's so many snake oils we've talked about that can be out there and that people are trying to sell you the quick fix. And Scott, I think it was you that mentioned last week that was really important. If somebody says they can cure your kid's autism, you need to run in the opposite direction, because we know
Yes.
that there is no cure right now. There's interventions that are incredibly effective that will decrease that child's the areas of deficit that they had to receive that diagnosis. There are things out there that we can do that will combat those. And that's where this evidence-based and research-based comes into play. So evidence-based they're very similar. Sometimes people use them interchangeably, but I would just want to give some clear examples for families. If they're like, oh, it's research-based, what does that mean? And if somebody says it's evidence-based, what does that mean? So evidence-based is really just a peer-reviewed study or a peer-reviewed intervention. That means that others have reviewed the results, deemed them those approaches that are effective, and essentially they've been able to reproduce those same outcomes in controlled environments. So it's been done with one child over, and it's been done with another child and again, and those same outcomes or similar outcomes have been found when that intervention is put into place. Research-based means they're using all the information they have from research to make those decisions or those treatment decisions, but there's not a lot of verified outcomes, right? So we know this is what we think when it comes to the research, but there's not support to say, hey, we've done this multiple times and we've gotten the same result.
Would it be fair to refer to it almost like it's an educated guess? It's like we think this will work based on previous experience, but we don't necessarily have data, where the other says we can show data every single time that this is going to be effective, and you should be able to expect the same level of results.
Yes, and a lot of things will go from being research-based first to now evidence-based, and that's the path of things that happen when it comes to different types of interventions. This kind of concept leads me to my next point I really want to talk about and hone in on for families. A fantastic resource is the National Standards Project. And that was began by the National Autism Center at the May Institute. And if you really think about how much time and energy has to go into reviewing research articles and studying them and seeing what the outcomes, this is years and years and years of research. And I don't know about you, Scott, but if I read a page or two at night before I go to bed, I'm asleep. And research articles are worse than that. So I commend the people that have spent time going through these articles, reading these articles, and disseminating the information in them for providers and parents to decipher, and breaks it down. Takes all those fancy words and research and breaks it down for families to understand. But the National Standards Project is its 2 phases have been complete, but they're currently working on the 3rd phase. And what these studies did, so it was launched in 2005, and the first publication was actually put out in 2009. And so that's 4 years they spent. We're talking doctorate level people that are way smarter than you and I combined, Scott, going over these articles and reading them and saying, hey, this works with kids with autism. This doesn't work with kids with autism. This maybe. And so what they did is they spent that 4 years going over thousands and thousands of research articles of interventions that have been used for children on the spectrum, and they sorted them out. They sorted them by established, emerging, unestablished, and harmful, potentially dangerous. And any sort of intervention that had been done with a child with autism during that 4 years, articles were read and they were sorted out through this study. Once that study was completed, they launched it. That study, the phase 1, only looked at studies for individuals up to the age of 21. Their second phase that they started in 2007 that ran to 2012, that looked at from birth essentially all the way up to over 22 years of age. So any study that had been done, and it sorted those types of interventions out. And I think it's really important for families to know about this resource and look into this resource, because it breaks down what things should I be looking for, what things are evidence-based that I can look for and search for and send my child to get that, to close that gap as soon as possible. Because we know that the earlier interventions that happen with our kiddos, the more effective those outcomes are.
Wow.
So I know
The
that's
idea
all
that you've
super,
got
super
a,
boring, but
but the idea that you've got this centralized database that you can go to, because I know that for us, my wife has a PhD in autism mom. Okay. She's self taught. She had to read books. She knows about neuroplasticity of the brain. She understands how she did so much research, but it wasn't all available in one place. So what you're saying is, if you go to this place, you can find all of this different information. It's already been sorted for you to help you to make sure that you're on the right track. So where would they go to access this? And let's make sure that we get that maybe in a graphic so that you can see this on YouTube. Where would they go for that?
absolutely. I actually have this linked in my website. I have a
Okay.
blog post about it that is at hoppertconsulting.com/national-standards-project. And that is a link. It summarizes what that study does, but it also gives links to the study itself. So if somebody really wants to go read 161 pages of research articles and the outcomes, they can do that. It also has a parent guide, and it also has an educator teacher guide that helps also inform individuals that are teaching kids on the spectrum what interventions are the most effective, and that will give them the links that they can get to those. They're free. They have free downloadable versions of those reports, but then also you can, if you're a kind of paper person, you need to flip through it, you can also order them through their bookstore. I think that's a really great resource. I also know that families have a really hard time of sitting down to study and look at through all this stuff. And so that's where I'm happy to reach out, and I'm happy to have them reach out to me and provide that support and guidance too. And like I said, they can go to my website, hoppertconsulting.com, send me scroll down to the bottom of my page, and I've got to contact me there and send me an email, and let's get started sorting through all of this information, because I know it's a lot. Like I said, doctorate level people spent 4 years going through it. Now we've got a mom who's trying to decipher it. There's definitely going to be some guidance that's going to be needed.
Let's talk a little bit about what the marketplace is like, because it will surprise you all of the different people that are out there in the marketplace that are promoting their therapies, their services, their ideas, etc. And the challenge is, as a parent, you don't always know who to trust in this environment. And I can tell you, you've got to beware. You've got to know what you're doing. I'll go back to in the 1940s and 1950s, there was medicine out or medical professionals out there that had no problem giving your child a frontal lobotomy if they thought that's what would help them, and if they had any mental issues whatsoever. And finally in the 60s we said, hey, wait a second, you shouldn't be doing this. This is all wrong. There's some therapies out there that you need to be cautious of, and you need somebody to come alongside you and say, hey, I've been down this road. Here's some things that you might want to focus on. And maybe we could talk a little bit about the services that you provide in that realm, Megan, because being somebody that's in the industry, you have some insights, but you don't, as by not being the therapist in this situation that's trying to convince you to do the therapy, and not being the insurance company that's basically trying to deny you the therapy, you can actually be an independent person and give them some ideas about how to do this, right? So maybe talk a little bit about your consulting and what exactly that looks like for families.
Absolutely. So my goal and objective is to help families get access to evidence-based treatment. And so when we're looking at different types of interventions, we're always looking at what interventions are going to address the core deficits of autism. There are all kinds of different interventions out there that will say, well, you do this because autism is a gut issue, or autism is this, or autism that. And I'm not discounting, there are kids out there with autism that do have tummy troubles and all sorts of other comorbid things going on. But when we're looking at the core deficits of autism, the lack of social interactions, the stereotypical repetitive behavior, the limits of language, we want to find interventions that focus in on those specific core deficits. And so that's what I'm here to help families do, is to find what interventions are going to be most effective for my child based on their diagnosis. We talked a little bit about the history a couple episodes ago regarding autism and how far it's come. We now know that the diagnostic criteria, everything falls under the autism spectrum, but there's different levels. So there's severity level 1, severity level 2, severity level 3. So Is the child need mild level support, significant level of support, those sort of things. And so based on that criteria, it helps families, it tells them which types of services they need to look at the most for their child. in addition to that report. If you've got a child that says, the report says they have a deficit in social skills. Well, social skills is such a big thing. It can be body language. It can be the way that a child communicates. It can be how they enter into a group of people. And so looking at what are those deficits. Okay, you can say lack of social skills or poor social skills. That's a whole nother umbrella itself. Sure. And so we can really dive in and get some additional assessments and evaluations and information from parents. Then I can help them guide and say, this is what we need. We need to really look and find him a social skills group for kids of his age, that they can meet with him, that they can practice these things. This child really needs more of an OT path because we're seeing some significant deficits in some of the fine motor skills, but their social skills are okay. And navigating and helping families figure out what path is best for them. And so that's what I'm here to do. That's what I really hope to do for families, is alleviate that stress and worry that I know that they have. I can't tell you how many times parents call me and it's supposed to be a 10-minute conversation. It turns into an hour.
Let's say that for a lot of people, just some good advice is going to help you spend the dollars that you have much more wisely. And let's talk about the service. So for an hour-long consultation session with you, Megan, what are we looking at?
Yes, my hourly rate for 1 hour consultation is $250. But if we have some folks that are interested in those services and they sign up through the website and heard about us from this podcast, I will knock that price down to $150. And we can start to navigate that path for them and get that conversation going.
Okay. And I can tell you that $150 that gives you some good advice that helps you to know you'll get a return on that investment very quickly in terms of being able to be a much more educated consumer in the marketplace of what these therapies are. And the other thing that I think is important, Megan, is just because you choose the right therapy doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be done the right way. And for many people, they may need your advice to say, hey, we're doing this, but it's not really getting us very far. Or I don't think this is working. Maybe they can bounce it off of you and you can say, you know what? I don't think your therapist is doing what they're supposed to do. Or along those paths, maybe just help counsel them to where they're in the most effective lane possible as well.
Yes. And we have kids that receive different types of services, speech services, OT services. And as a BCBA, my perspective of things is a little bit different than an OT or a PT. And I love to collaborate with OTs and PTs and speech therapy or occupational therapists and speech therapists. I love it because there are areas of language that I have no idea about. And so I love to learn from them just as much as I know they love to learn the behavior piece from me. But just because the doctor says your child needs speech therapy, you need to go find a speech therapist. Mom says, okay, great. I know speech therapists are hard to come by, but I found one. Great. I've got them in. That doesn't mean that speech therapist has the experience or expertise to work with your child that's on the spectrum. Maybe their expertise is language delays in preteens or something like that. And so just because you find that professional doesn't mean they have the knowledge or the skill set to work with your child based on their needs. I hope they do. I've had kids come to us before, to me before, and I'm like, I need to pick the brain of another professional or another expert because this is out of my scope of practice.
Yes.
And just making sure that the kids, the goals that the therapists and things that are working on, also as a mom and dad, I think it's important that you understand why they're working on those goals. Sometimes that's hard to see. I've had parents say, why are they working on this in speech? I don't understand. Or this is how they're working on it. And so I can help them understand that perspective and also help them take that and put it into practice at home. Because we know that the more child practices, the more effective the intervention is going to be and the more progress we're going to see more quickly.
Great. So as a parent, you've got to learn how to be their coach as well, right? You've got to work with them at home and make sure you understand the things that they're working on so that they get implemented at home and that you're not canceling out some of the things that they're working on in the therapy sessions, right?
Yes.
Anything else we need to talk about autism tonight, Megan, or do we want to move
we
on?
We probably should transition because I could sit here and talk about this all night long.
For the faith part, last week, and we mentioned that we established the podcast on a verse in John chapter 9 where Jesus is approached by his disciples and asked about a man that had been blind from birth and whether or not it was his parents that sinned that caused this blindness. And the point I wanted to make last week is we're constantly trying to figure out why do bad things happen to good people? Why do things happen this way? Because in our minds, we almost assume that there's got to be a reason behind everything. We can't accept the fact that sometimes random things happen. Sometimes things just happen that are beyond your control, that don't have any other reason except they just did happen, or that we live in a fallen world, in a world where if someone chooses to drink too much and then gets behind the wheel and happens to be driving down the road that your loved one's driving down, it has no more reason than just the randomness of somebody pulled the wheel at the wrong time and a crash happened and your loved one perished because somebody's thoughtlessness. And autism is one of those things that causes you to really want to question God on a lot of levels. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the idea of struggling with God and the fact that when you're in this situation, there's going to be some faith struggles. I went through a couple of years of what I refer as my dark time, where I was pretty angry with God, and I was questioning him, and I was very frustrated. I still went through the motions. I still went to church, and I still did a lot of the things that you would do if you had a strong faith. But on the inside, it wasn't a pretty picture. And my guess is if you're listening to this podcast tonight or whenever it's being played, you may be going through that struggle. And I just want to let you know that's part of this. You're going to have to struggle with God a little bit. And if we go back to the Old Testament with the story of Jacob and how he struggled with God and literally wrestled with him the entire night and had scars to show for it. And then God renames him and says, I'm going to call you Israel, and I'm going to build a nation on you. And when God gives you a name, there's meaning behind it. And the word Israel, translated into English, literally means struggles with God. And part of what I would just want to be real clear to everybody on is God set up his nation. And he's used a little sarcasm here if you think about it, Megan. He goes, I'm going to call the nation that's going to follow me those that struggle with me, right? So if you're going to follow God, you're going to have to struggle with him. And that doesn't mean that you're distant from him. In fact, the only way you're ever going to struggle with God is to get close to him. That's the way we struggle with people, is when we're close. And I can also say that through that struggle, my faith is stronger now. And I'll always tell people, I don't ever want to have to go down this road again. I'm done with this road. It's not a road I chose. But as long as I'm on it, I'm going to accept the blessings that I get along the way. And one of those blessings has been, I've got a stronger faith. And I think I've got a little bit better insight into why we struggle than I ever would if I'd have never been down this road. And I'm thankful for that. That's made me who I am.
Scott, can you share a little bit about what helped you get through that dark time? It's obviously a journey. What are maybe some things you did or mindsets you had that helped you get from that dark side to where you're at now?
So I can tell you that at the very beginning, when Julie and I first discussed what's this autism going to look like, I could see that we were going to have some blessings along the way. I knew that. I've been through some other things in life that have taught me that when you are struggling, there's other things that bless you. So I knew that there was going to be blessings, but because it was my child, I did not want my child to have to walk this path. If I have to walk it alone, I'll go walk it alone, but I don't want to be taking my child on this path. I would say probably the biggest thing is being in community with others. And we can talk about the fact that when you have a child with autism, it's easy to unplug from all of the community that you have. You find yourself separated from friends, from family, and especially from churches. A lot of times churches are a hard place to take a child with autism. Thankfully, I'm at the Hills Church where I go in Keller. We have a special needs ministry that's designed to help families with autistic and any special needs child come in and have a safe place so that you can still be a part of that community. I'm going to encourage those that are there that feel like they are struggling. It's going to be easy for you to drop out. It's going to be easy. There's going to be Sunday mornings where you don't want to go to church. There's going to be events that you don't want to go to. And I'm just going to encourage you, hang in there, struggle with it, try, find a church that's welcoming to your child if you need to, because you've got to stay plugged in. You've got to stay connected. If you think about it, wolves are always trying to find the animal that's wandered off from the pack, right? And if you're wandering off from the pack and you're out there on your own, It's easy for bad things to happen for you when you're separated from the pack. You've got to consciously stay with other believers and other Christians and others that can pour into you and encourage you. That's a long answer to a short question, Megan, but that's what I would say is you've got to have that kind of time, and you've got to have people around you that you can have those challenging conversations with. Find somebody that's not going to try to put a happy face on everything when you're talking with him. Oh, I've heard people say, oh, you guys are such good parents. God knew what he was doing when he gave you Colby. And I'm like, don't tell me that. I don't need to put a happy face on this. Okay. I don't. I need somebody that's going to say, man, I understand you're struggling right now. And I understand that this is probably not what you want, but let's lean on each other for a little while and let's walk down this path together. You need people in your life like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think, Scott, you made a really great point of families going to church, going to those events. And I think it's important to just say, you don't have to go for the whole thing. Just go for a little bit and just go for 10 or 15 minutes. Obviously, maybe you can only make it through worship time with the church or whatever. And then your child, that's all they can tolerate. That's a step in the right direction, right? And the next time we try to stay a little bit longer.
Yes. And the idea that you should be in a judgment-free environment in a church anyway, okay? Mm-hmm. But there's this fear that others are judging you. Let me just encourage you, when you're in that situation, there's not near the judgment that you're going to get from others that you're going to give to yourself. And you've got to let go of that. You've just got to accept that there's going to be awkward situations. And if I could tell you a story, so we're sitting in church in the upper balcony at the back because that was easy for us. And Colby's watching a video, got his headphones on, watching a video, and the pastor is at a very dramatic point in the sermon and then stops, and there's absolute quiet. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, Colby yells, "Sex!" But it sounded like sex, just at the top of his lungs. And everybody that was around us just turned, and I'm like red. It's embarrassing. But you just got to get over that. Those kind of things are going to happen, and you just got to go, hey, it's going to make a great story one of these days, just like it did right now. So just don't let yourself get caught up in the judgment that you think's coming your way, because it's probably not. It's actually probably a lot less than that.
I had a conversation with the father the other day who was talking about his son, and they go out to the grocery store all the time, and he's limited language, but he loves to say hi to every single person that he sees, just waves and says hi. And he said, is that something that you think we should address or we should work on? I said, no. First of all, kids with autism, sometimes they could care less to interact with other people. The fact that your child wants to interact with people on a daily basis, everybody he meets, and wants to say hi, no. I said, and to me, I told the dad, I said, he's probably bringing more joy to people than you realize. And the people that look away and don't wave, then forget them. That's on them. They're having a bad day. But I promise you, your child's bringing more joy, and that's bringing joy to your child. Yeah. So no, we're not shutting that down. He's going to be the friendly guy out there saying hi to everybody.
I know that there were times like we would be in the grocery store and Colby would take off running, and we're running after him just as fast as we could. And there's all these people looking at us. We had some people throw a little judgment our way every now and then, and they would say little things, and it hurt. I'm not going to lie. I'm going to tell you that it hurt, but I'm also going to tell you that over time, I think you just have to understand they don't know. They're not on your path. They don't know what you're going through, and you just have to let that go off like water off a duck's back. You just have to say, I'm not going to let my attitude be impacted by people that don't understand the road I'm on. Now, I'll certainly take advice from those that are on the road I'm on, but I'm just not going to take judgment from those that aren't on the road I'm on, that don't understand it. So maybe the other thing we're talking about, Megan, here is the idea of family and the importance that the family stays strong and close. We're going to talk about siblings at some point. We're going to talk about grandparenting in autism, but at least these first couple of weeks, I really want to focus on the husband and wife relationship, because with autism, it has a divorce rate of 80%. And that's parents of any special needs child. It puts some stresses on your family that you may not recognize it until it's too late. So I would like to talk a little bit about what that looks like and how to keep your relationship with your husband or wife strong as you're going through that walk. And the first thing that I have to tell you is you have to understand it's an emotional time, and a man is going to respond different to the stress than a woman is going to respond. And some of the conflict that you may have is you're looking at your partner, and the emotional reaction that they're having is so much different than the emotional reaction that you're having. You're going, who is this person and why are they reacting this way, when it really is a man woman difference. I talk about moms go into super mom mode. They are incredible. They're like, let's take care of this child. And I think it goes back to those mom hormones that kick in when there's babies and the baby needs something. Mom's going to be there. They're going to take care of that. Where men tend to have a completely opposite response. And this is where there's a lot of conflict. Men have a hard time adjusting to the idea that there's a problem in their child. Moms recognize it. They see it. Men are like, I'm not going to accept that there's a problem with my child. And I've talked to a lot of dads in the first couple of weeks and months. They're just in denial. Hey, if we just treat them like all of our other kids, they'll eventually be like all of our other kids. Probably not going to happen. And what happens is men tend to back off. They don't know what to do. And so they're like, I don't know what to do, so I'm just going to back off. And I know for me, it was really hard because playing with Colby was just impossible for me. I'm the kind of guy that you hand me a football, we'll play catch back and forth for hours, but that's not the way that you play with an autistic child. And if a mom's looking at a dad going, why aren't you in there doing what you should do? It just doesn't come naturally to a dad like maybe it does to a mom. And it's a little bit harder. Mm-hmm. I don't want to sound like I'm making excuses for dads, because I'm going to tell you, dads, you've got to step in and you've got to lean into it, and you've got to play your role, and you've got to figure it out. It's just in those initial stages, it's going to look different depending on your sex role in the relationship.
And moms and wives can pick up on their husbands' demeanors and their husbands' emotions, and moms are fixers, wives are fixers. We take care of everybody, right? And so yes. I'm just going to go over here and I'm going to work on fixing our kid and getting him what he needs, so that then dad's okay and dad's happy and dad's not as stressed out about this diagnosis as well. And so I think it's really important that the dads figure out what they can connect with their child. Like you said, you throw a football, that's not what you do. I know you and Colby go get your haircuts at the barber together. And what are those things that you connect with the child? These first few stages, I think it's important dads figure out, what can I do to help support mom? Yes. Maybe that means you do bedtime one night so mom can go take a bath, or right. She can go sit and read her book, or she can go to the grocery store by herself. Or there's so much power in driving in the car by yourself as a mom to the grocery store and back to pick up groceries.
Can I mention this? And it's almost the opposite, because the thing that I see that's a problem is the amount of time that the husband and wife spend together. I don't believe in quality time. The only way you'll ever get quality time is to spend a quantity of time together. And one of the things that my wife and I actually did early in our relationship is we consciously did things together. One of the things that we do together is we go to the supermarket. I don't like the supermarket. It's not what I want to do, but I know when I'm there, I'm with my wife and we can have conversations and we can talk. And especially when Colby was little, we needed somebody there to help keep an eye on him while the other was doing that. So while in some cases it may be great that mom gets to get away for a little bit of time to herself, I'm also going to say, guys, you need to step in and you need to consciously be putting time together in the relationship, just quiet time where you and your wife get a chance to talk. And Julie and I are big on going for walks. Take a mile walk. It's 20 minutes, 22 minutes. At the end of the day, you guys can be together. And just the act of being side by side, you don't have to say a lot, but just the act of being together side by side doing something creates synergies in the relationship, and it helps you to bond. And you've got to consciously be looking for ways to do that in the relationship. And you've got to lean in. And I think the last part I want to talk about is you have to recognize that you're going through a grieving process. Just like if you were to have lost that child, both couples would be grieving. And if you go back to Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, the 5 stages of grief, there's denial, anger, gosh, I can't even remember, depression. There's all these different stages that you're going through till you finally get to acceptance. Now, with autism, it's a little bit different in that it's an ongoing process. You'll go back and forth all through this process because you'll get hit like when all the other kids start to school, if your kid's not going to school, you're going to grieve the fact that your kid's not able to go to school. Mm-hmm. I remember it really hit my wife real hard when we were at church and we saw all these kids that were going off to their first retreat. It was a first junior high retreat, and it was Colby's class that was going to be going, and Colby's not going to be going on retreat. Or when they turn 16 and all the other kids are getting 16. A driver's license, you almost have to go through that process over and over again. And you literally have to grieve the child you dreamed that you would have. And you almost have to allow them to be put to rest. And then there's the acceptance of the child that you have. And you accept, this is the child I have, and this is the one I'm going to raise. And it's going to cause me to raise them differently than the child that I dreamed that I had. But when you get to that point of acceptance, that's when you can have that strength in your relationship. And you get to appreciate the child for what they bring to the table. And you get to love them the way God loves us, with all of our faults and our problems and everything else. So it can be a real uplifting point, but you just have to know you're going through the same emotions that somebody would if they actually lost their child. And it's just to it's probably to the same amount and to the same extent. And you've got to give each other in the marriage, the husband and the wife, you've got to give them grace to do it in the manner that they grieve that. Just love each other. Make a point to love each other every day. And with that, Megan, I think we probably have discussed the family part as far as I can tell.
Yes.
Maybe we talk a couple of the things that we want to offer everybody, and just as a reminder, because we're here to be a service. And the big thing that I'm going to ask is that if you're listening to this and another family or another person that would benefit by it, please pass it on. We want to be able to build an audience through viral spreading. So please take a moment. If you can think of somebody that needs to hear this right now, pass it on. Also, if you like it or if you don't mind, throw us a comment. That also helps others to be able to find us in the social media world. Take a moment to do that. That would be a huge help to us. And then, Megan, you want to talk a little bit about your website and what they might be able to find there?
Yes, Scott, I did want to throw this out there. I would love for families to reach out to us and share with us what they're struggling with, their perspectives are. Maybe they have some pointers, some help, things that kind of help them get through the hills and valleys of their journey. Also, if you just want us to pray for you, like I am all for, just send us your name. We will pray for you. I think that's something very powerful that we can do. Send us an email. Our email here from the ground up is autismfaithfamily. It's all one word at gmail.com, autismfaithfamily@gmail.com. We love struggling with these stories. We love to hear what you need us to pray for you for. Anything that you think we would be helpful for us to reach more people with the show. So
yes. With
that, I will switch to Hoppert Consulting. Make sure you check out my website, hoppertconsulting.com. It's HAUPERT consulting.com. I've got all kinds of resources on there for families. I actually just uploaded the free autism checklist. It's a checklist that families can download that kind of walks them through the first few steps of the journey after their diagnoses. It helps them start that navigational process, if you will, through their autism journey. And all kinds of resources like the one I had shared before, the National Standards Project. There is a blog post about that you can jump on and read more about, and also navigate to the National Standards Project and download the resources they have there.
And then a final ask, guys, if you're in the North Tarrant County area and you're looking for a church that's open to helping, open and welcoming to families with special needs children, let me ask you to check out the Hills Church in Keller, Texas. We actually have 3 campuses. We have one in Keller, one in North Richland Hills, one in West Fort Worth. All 3 campuses have a special needs minister that's there to help coordinate what special needs families have. Each campus has a little bit different approach, so you'd want to introduce yourself to that particular special needs minister. And the address for that is thehills.org. Thehills.org. And just look up, you can find those people. Or if you have some challenges with that, again, just email us and we'll put you in contact with the contacts there. But we'd love to be able to see you participate in a church service with us as well. So with that, Megan, anything else?
I can think of for this week. We've got lots to cover in the next few weeks, I know. And I know you're anxious to probably get packed and ready to go to Italy.
I'm going to close with ciao. Ciao, baby. I'm heading to Italy. Thanks, everybody. Stay tuned for our next episode. Right. Bye now.
Bye.